Well, hello there, and we are back again talking about your free CEU components as relates to public safety and also child abuse prevention. So we're going to be at still component component 6. I think we're at part 3 of component 6. We don't have that many more to go. We have been really going through this because it's only once a month. It's been taking us a little bit. But I am here to share with you on last time, I think, the component part 6 on part 2. We talked really in depth about, the safe environment. We talked about the church and the workplace. We kind of talked about different areas, especially those who are taking care of youth or teens in a youth ministry, or if you're a youth pastor or leader. And so anyway, let's just jump real quick in here. Let me get my timer set so I won't go over my time. Wanted to also make sure that you get pen and pad so you can be ready to take your notes, and know that, again, this is a free CEU training. If you're interested in getting the certificate, just be sure and watch the details that is on the description space there on the YouTube video of this teaching. All right, we're talking today on component 6. Still, we're here. We're doing component 6.3, and we're talking about training caregivers. See, here's a real big problem in this last day where we are, and that is because many of us refuse to train the caregivers. Especially when you're in a church, in the old way we've done things in the past, we have a tendency to just go ahead and bring them in and kind of show them, how to help out and things like that, and then you'll release them to a group of kids. But there's two main areas of education that we've got to emphasize as it relates to caregivers. First, we've got to understand not only these caregivers are those that we leave our kids with in church, but what about the caregivers as a parent, the caregivers as a guardian, of these youth and these youth-serving organizations. We got to know that these are two main areas that we got to look at as far as education is concerned, and making sure we're training them, and even the parents, because many of them are working in a place that's dealing with youth, and many of them don't understand the accountability and the responsibility and what happens to the person that has this organization, whether it's a child care facility or whether it is a church with a youth providing service. And so the first thing we need to do as far as training a caregiver for education is we need to give them education in a specific area as it relates to sexual abuse. And so you've got to be very specific, but you also have to be very somewhat discreet as it relates to, depending on the age of the caregiver, even that person that is volunteering helping. And so education specific. You got to be very specific about child abuse, sexual abuse in particular. You got to be very specific and make sure that they clearly, educated about your policies and your procedures as it relates to that. And then the second part of it is education about the organization's child sexual abuse prevention policies and procedures, which means that you want to make sure that everything that you are going to be doing, your rules and regulations about reporting things and so on, as we talked about earlier on, then they are very clear and educated in these two main areas of education as being a caregiver. And then the next part we're going to be talking about here is the critical content for the training the caregivers. So there's some very critical contents of the education that you want to make sure that you do, especially when you're delivering education as it relates to sexual abuse. And so caregivers have to understand that child sexual abuse and the role that they are, required to do as far as preventing it. Education in these areas should be in the context of explaining healthy different ways for development against these areas of sexual abuse or sexual development as it relates to kids that may be growing up and looking a little bit more mature than others. What is appropriate and when. And so these are some bullets I'm going to share with you as far as the content for that sex abuse information that you're going to be giving, so you make sure that you don't give too much or less. And so the first thing, you want to make sure you define child sexual abuse. And that's including the continuum of the appropriate behavior and the inappropriate behavior and any harmful behaviors. And so you want to define that and make very clear that they understand what that means. And then the second one is challenge that is commonly held by myths. That means any challenges that we have that are held by the myths that we grew up with, that we know about child sexual abuse, such as the myths that most offenders or strangers are easily identified about. And so you want to make sure that your challenges that you may have to try to get them to understand, that you conquer those, and that you make sure that you challenge them, and getting clear understanding about both what offender is labeled as, or what they do, and strangers, how easily it is for strangers to come in without, being first approved and or identified with maybe proper identification and so on. And then the third thing is you want to describe warning signs, okay? Be very specific, such as a child has said that they're urinating down there and it's burning or it's hurting, or a young boy keeps touching his rectum or touching his rear end, that is, and saying that it hurt or what have you after they spent some time with another caregiver or what have you. And so anyway, you want to describe these warning signs for sexually offending behaviors and victimization and what's to watch for. And then the fourth thing, you want to discuss how to talk to their children about sexuality. So you're not just trying to, how they say, just do everything inside. You're trying to educate this person about these areas as it relates to protecting any child, for that matter, about sexual abuse. And so you want to make sure you describe the warning signs and the behaviors, and then, like I said, number 4 is you want to discuss how to talk to their children about sexuality and child sexual abuse, as well as how to talk to other adults about this issue, because a lot of adults are blind to the situation. They don't even want to hear about it. They don't think it's even necessary. But before and after suspicions of sexual abuse is very, very important, on giving them the education on that, because it's going to be needed, because if something should rise up in a conversation or something may come up in one of the caregivers, groups that they're dealing with, it can be very, very serious lawsuit if we don't pay attention to these areas that could, be raised when a child is trying to give you a signal that they're being harmed. And so you want to also use role playing, to try to bring it and make it very plain and clear. I truly believe in role playing when I'm doing training, because I want to make sure that people really get an understanding how serious this thing is, and so they can have visual about what could easily go on. And so it's very critical that you use role playing to make caregivers feel more, comfortable about bringing up these topics, because a lot of times people be uncomfortable about these things because many of them have been violated. And then the next, the fifth thing is you want to explain the caregiver's responsibility to act if they witness or hear about inappropriate or harmful behaviors. So you want to explain to them over and over again. You're going to have to do this, because some people, we only get 75 or 70% of our hearing, and the rest of it is lost. And a lot of that is because we're just so busy trying to hear or see or do something anyway, else beyond what we're supposed to be doing, just nosy all the time, want to see something and hear something, when God is trying to ring our bell about something much more critical. And so you want to, the sixth thing is you want to describe, let me see, that's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we're at the 6. You want to describe where to go for help within your organization, such as who the point person is for the child sexual abuse issue, whether it's outside, it happened outside or inside the organization. You want to make sure whoever that point person is, that's who needs to be talking or making the report of the incident. And so you want to describe who that is in your training, and so they will know who to talk to. And then number 7, you want to provide resources for seeking help outside of your organization. Because remember, we talked about that early on in some of the training. A lot of people is not going to try to get any help or try to talk to anybody inside for fear of retaliation, or fear of, them may looking like they too spiritually ignorant, or they may have known something about it, and so on. So you got to look for outside help, with people that's dealing with child sexual abuse prevention and these different type of organizations. And so you want to make sure that you get you a resource list. In Houston, you can call 211 and ask them to give you a list or send you a resource booklet that will connect you with the right people to give you any type of information that you need to provide the resources for people that may be hurting or that may have been violated. And so you can have this resource within your ministry. There's also another resource book that I use a lot of, and because it has a lot of information in there, and I even had put my ministry in there. You might want to do the same. It's called the Blue Book. And the Blue Book, every time I get on these calls, this phone, excuse me. Anyway, the Blue Book, what it does, it tends to have a lot of resources in it. It really was designed for those that have HIV. So you know that it is full of all kinds of resources if it was designed for people of that population, because they want to make sure they cover just about everything they possibly can to get them the help that they need. And so I use it quite frequently because it's broken down in different categories and everything for resources. So you want to consider getting your ministry's name in there and putting what you do in there. You can just take the Blue Book or type in Blue Book. Resource manual, Google it, and then call them, and they'll give you as many cases that you need because they give them free. And you need those to give those, especially to those that are counseling and dealing with these kids. You need those in your ministry so that you can give them out to those leaders who are dealing with kids and maybe getting in crisis and things like that. You can have those Blue Books issued throughout your leadership teams. And so you want to be able to provide the right type of information, especially if they're going outside of the church or the business organization. And that one is a good one. We actually put our organization in there, too. But anyway, then the next part of this is the organization's child sexual abuse and policy procedures. Now, we talked about that early on, the very beginning, about the fact that a lot of churches are being sued because they do not understand the critical need to have the policy and procedures. So you're going to have to do this. I don't care how much it seems like it's unnecessary, but you're going to have it because you should be able to have the policy and procedures so you can inform the organization's, leaders, all those that are dealing with those populations, whether they've been violently abused or whether they are teens and or kids, babies, or what have you. So these caregivers can be informed about what child sexual abuse is, your policies and your procedures, so they can know how to, what to do, that is, and what to expect, whenever a case should come up, or when they're dealing with volunteers that may be doing some things they should not be doing based on what you do within your organization, your ministry, or your business. It's very important that you have these in place so there won't be no question. They've got that in the orientation. You went over these situations or these concerns that your organization or your ministry or your church that you are going to have as far as a policy is concerned and a procedure, so they'll know what to do. And so here's some nuggets that you want to understand what they should expect of your organization and the employees and the volunteers. The first thing that you should include in that policy procedure that they can expect is that they need to describe what your organization does, such as its missions and its role. So in your policy and procedures, that first procedure is going to describe what your organization do and the mission and the role within that particular description of the mission. And then the second thing is you want to define what activities are appropriate and inappropriate. We talk about this over and over again. It sounds redundant, but these are different categories related to different situations that's very important that you know. And so you want to define what activities are appropriate and the ones that are inappropriate in your organization, such as whether your organization sponsors overnight trips, remember we're talking about that, or mentoring, or one-on-one coaching, or whatever. You want to make sure in your policy procedures that you define what these types of services that you provide, whether it's mentoring or overnight trips, who's in charge, and what are the responsibility, and then being a part of that, what are the procedures, do they need to sign a release, and so on. And then the third thing is you need to, think about the responsibilities, that is, of each caregiver and within your organization. For example, as you begin to look at the responsibilities that you're trying to give them, then you'll define who is responsible for for instance, transporting the kids from one place to another, and what they can and cannot do, and, will they be able to wait for them as they're being late for coming on the bus or whatever. But you got to make sure that people understand your policy and your procedures, because what if they stay later than normal when someone else is waiting for them to pick them up, or what if another kid gets on there that's probably been banned from the classroom setting because of their inappropriate behavior, maybe with kids or with, someone that they violated with their voice or words, or just doing hand language or touching someone. So you got to make sure that you understand what your role is or your responsibility is as a caregiver or a volunteer or even a ministry, director or business owner. You want to define those responsibilities or who's going to do what. And then the fourth thing is you want to encourage caregivers to attend sessions and different type of programs whenever they can, so they can make sure that the youth that they are in care of are being protected and that the policies are being followed. And so you want to encourage them to attend different sessions, and you have like I told you, have the cross-training going on, so everybody is very clear about what's going on. It's never too much to be cross-trained or have these sessions, I call them in-service meetings, so people can begin to understand about what is needed, what is changing, and that kind of thing, so everybody will be on the same page. But when one is not at the meeting or one doesn't understand or see the necessity of it, you're going to have this lump in the middle. I mean, that is the seed of a tear in the middle of what you're trying to do good. And so you got to make sure that they understand and they sign the agreement that they are willing to agree with what you're doing, whether it's something new or whether it's something that is already in place that you are maybe shifting to another direction or a different way of handling it. And so then training youth. Okay. Child sexual abuse. Now, it's really serious when you're trying to train youth, that means peer-to-peer, to be able to serve their peers. See, because these kids, when they start liking each other or they start having these issues that are, fine line of generational issues and mental health issues and all that, you got to make sure that this child sexual abuse education and training for these youth, they have to be both developmentally appropriate, and they also have to be at the proper skill level, as I was talking about earlier on, so you can make sure that you're not trying to pour in more than they can really contain, and or that their little mind is able to understand as far as developing, to be able to help. And so you want to make sure that the different skills and the knowledge that you're trying to give them, that they can provide to these adolescents, these younger children, that's really on their peers. So you don't want to get somebody in there trying to pour in because they are always there and trying to help. No, you need to get someone that is going to be mature enough based on their age level, if they're going to be helping with their peers, to make sure that they understand and that you are able to give them the training based on that developmental, appropriate, proper skill level. Okay, and then the next segment of this we're talking about is going to be highlighted as the critical content for the training of the youth. So it's a little bit different than what we talked about a little bit earlier on, because we still talk about sexual abuse. And so your organization has got to provide the youth with some basic child sexual abuse information. So this is going to be at another level. And so you're going to, number one, you're going to help provide general information about this child sexual abuse, and then any type of verbal abuse, including what constitutes inappropriate, appropriate, and harmful behaviors that's coming from adults and even other youth. And so you got to know that just because their peers are there, that, many times kids won't squeal on other kids, but you got to make sure that they understand that they are responsible for reporting. For example, youth need to know that no one has the right to force, to trick, or coerce them into sexual situations, and that sexual offender, not the victims, are responsible for their behavior. And so you got to make sure that the kids understand this when you're training them in the content of how to, report and or to be more watchful about abuse, whether it's verbal or physical. And so then you want to teach that youth how to interact, number two. Teach that youth how to interact appropriately with each other, and so that they would know what can be said and what shouldn't be said, and so on. and done, of course. And then number 3, you want to, and I think I already said that, discuss the importance. Yeah, that's number 3. You want to discuss the importance of reporting the sexual abuse or the verbal abuse, okay, or any physical abuse for that matter, whether sexual or not. And then number 4, you want to tell the youth to whom they should report what they believe is inappropriate or harmful behavior, whatever they saw, whatever they heard, so that they can know that they got to immediately report what they saw or they heard. And then you want to teach them how to seek assistance from your organization or your ministry, where you've created this personal type of safety program within your ministry or church, if your church or your ministry is interested, that is, in implementing one. So you want to think about having a safety program. You want to figure out a way that you can always bring these youth together and understand safety, both for the physical body, for the emotions, and also to making sure that, when the physical body is in danger or is being violated, that they understand what you mean by your safety program rules. And so here's some protective factors, and we're going to get off of here. These protective factors that you need to take in consideration when you train these youth, they're going to be factors that can help prevent these youth from getting abused themselves, even if they're serving. And then the youth should be educated even the more about how to make themselves and others safer, so that as they give this information or they're watching for any type of violation against your policy and procedures or what you're showing them, as it relates to, kids being tricked or coerced or being inappropriately talked to or touched. So the first thing you want to do is you want to educate them. These are protective measures I'm giving you now. You want to educate the youth about the bystander approach, okay? And so what I mean by the bystander approach, that means you want to empower them to intervene quickly or tell someone when they see this done, anything that's harmful, any type of harmful interactions between the adult and the child or between youth. And you want to encourage them to tell a trusted adult, someone they know that's going to get the information where it needs to be quickly, about that inappropriate behavior or the harmful thing that has been happening to themselves or even to their peers or their friends. And then the other protective measure, the second one, is you want to empower that youth as a partner for your ministry or for your church or business in the prevention process. You want to let them know that you're my partner in prevention. That's very important, and you might want to write that down. You are going to be on my prevention team, that safety team, and you are now going to be one of my partners in prevention, okay? And so then as they learn to do what you have generated for this prevention or safety team, you want to encourage them to adopt these healthy strategies or to help come up with some healthy or safety strategies to protect themselves, such as maybe checking with a caregiver or an adult before going to do an activity, or maybe going places with friends instead of alone, and identifying trusted people that they know they can confide in. So you want to empower them in that way. You want to encourage them to adopt these strategies and then to give you some strategies. And then the third thing is, and this is the last one for the protective measure, you want to educate the youth about healthy sexuality. Many of the kids have lost their identity, and many of them are being bullied about their sexual, identity or sexual choice, but many of them are confused. So you've got to educate them about healthy sexuality and how to feel good within themselves, so that they won't feel that they shouldn't be a girl, or or they should be a boy, or the boy feels he should be a girl, and so on. Then for that reason, it's because of being bullied or maybe being violated, so they don't like the touch of a female if it is a male, or they don't want the touch of a male if it's a female. And so many times we find this happening because of the kid's mindset after they've been sexually violated and or inappropriately handled with their flesh. It's very difficult. It's very traumatic for a child to revisit a place where they've been violated sexually and or been abused physically, whether it was sexual or not. And so you want to teach that youth to recognize these types of behaviors that are, inappropriate, and making sure that they avoid any exploitative, I like to use that word, or inappropriate behavior toward these different kids that they are in groups with, and then avoid this explosive type of reporting or explosive type of, telling what they remember out of anger. So you want to make sure you teach them so that everything can be handled quickly, and most importantly, that it'll be handled so that everybody that's involved, that you can get down to the bottom of what was going on, so that everybody can get the situation under control. The incident will be very clear, and guess what? You won't be in court. Well, that closes us out for this segment. I'm glad it was short, but we will be coming back with, of course, still we're on component 6, and then we'll come back with overcoming the challenges that child sexual abuse and public safety prevention, intervention, that is, in any youth serving organization. That means any church that have youth services, or any ministry or business organizations that have providing services to youth. We want to talk about overcoming these challenges, or intervening and prevention against any sexual abuse or any type of physical or emotional abuse to these children that they are servicing. God bless you. Please share this link, and be sure and read the directives in the description there. And frankly, when you get done with this, if you choose to get your certification, we'll be happy to give you the certificate of competency once we finish this complete training here with the public safety and child sexual abuse prevention. God bless you.